So glad to see so many familiar faces. And I apologize for the birds making noise, but I try to chase them away. Some people may not like them. I actually like them. So good to see you guys.
All right. So at the bottom of the screen, you should be seeing icons with Q&A, chat. So use this to ask questions. If you can, raise your hand. We're going to add you with video to the panelists. Thank you. More people are showing with their hands up. That's great.
So we are commenting with Jenny about the birds. So yes, we love the birds. Elsa, we don't hear you. Do you want to say something? Go ahead. Oh, I'm not the host. I cannot unmute.
I'm sorry. May I speak?
Yes.
The icons the doctor was speaking of, they're not at the bottom of my iPad.
Oh, you have iPad. So on iPad, it will be
on top.
Mm-hmm. We have New York online. Wonderful. Hello, Abigail.
So you should, normally on iPad, you either have the three dots, which are going to expand into the menu, and then you should find.
But if he can hear you and see you, you're all right.
If you can hear me and see me, I'm okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, then good.
There will be times that we will mute everybody because sometimes the background noise accumulates, and it is very hard for everyone. Could you unmute everyone for now, just for a moment?
We unmute everyone for now.
Oh, wonderful. Hello, everyone.
Mariusz, we can start. If anyone else wants to join with camera, that would be splendid. Just raise your hand. Otherwise, we're good to go. Welcome to the 6th episode of our webinars. And the stage is yours, Dr. Wirga.
Thank you, Dr. Janczyk. So thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to our 6th webinar. And it's such a joy to do it with you all, and you're all joining us. And thank you to Prosoma and Dr. Andrew Janczyk, who is co-founder of Prosoma, who is also a physician. And he really provides all the technical background for this and makes it possible, because I'm not as technically inclined as he is.
Good. Good time to take a walk.
And I also wanted to thank Dr. Michael DeBernardi, who is a clinical psychologist and my very good friend. And we've been committing different papers and authoring book chapters, books, and so on. So that is such a, and we did tons of workshops together. So I really, sometimes I truly believe that he can read my mind. So I often don't give him much information before the workshop because I am totally certain that he knows everything already. But his contribution is absolutely wonderful, and he gives you a little bit different perspective, because I'm not as come on, I'm Polish. I have different perspectives. So, Michael, can you say a few words?
Well, thank you for bringing me into this project, Mariusz. It's been a lot of fun, help providing some structure to my weekends, and really exciting to see all of you joining us and working on this with us. It's very inspiring. it allows us to help a lot of people at the same time, or at least share this experience with a lot of people at the same time. And so I'm really grateful that you're all here and for the opportunity.
So this is our sixth workshop, and we will make it more interactive than usually. So we will have more polls, and we will be, because again, we emphasize that we want social integration and physical distancing, not social distancing. So and particularly that our workshop today is the second part on the relationship issues. And yes, and we consider that our relationships are the source of greatest joy, but also the hardest task that we have in life. And as we said before, we quoted George Bernard Shaw, who said, the greatest misconception about human communication is that it has ever happened. So we don't communicate, we miscommunicate. And then we try to fix those communications and miscommunications, and we are creating new messes. And I'm not here speaking as an expert on relationships. You just ask my wife how lousy I am. But actually I think I was really pretty bad in relationships from early on, and I think I needed some additional help, and I was seeking different ways of improving my relationship with people, and that is the reason I needed structure. For a lot of people, it comes naturally. Like for my kids and for my wife, it seems like, wow, that is what. So I'm a little bit jealous. I needed to learn it hard way, you know. So I'm providing structure to this, and I'm so glad that I was able to come across a lot of mentors who were experts in these relationships. And there is a lot of stuff that is not helpful at all, you know. So, and I tried it.
She went out a while.
Last week we were talking about. Yes, go ahead.
Well, we don't know if she's got the fires.
I'm going to mute everyone.
I think people ought to.
Going to help.
Thank you. We will unmute everyone shortly too, and we will give you some polls. So, last week we were talking about. We gave you some exercises, and we asked you to practice them. And so today we will ask you to also practice some stuff. We'll do practical things. And the first thing that we asked you to practice was so-called the disarming technique. And for those who have not heard that before, let us explain what is this disarming technique. So if someone tells us something or is accusing us, particularly when they are accusing us of something, we usually react in a defensive way, right? Or we react by counterattack. Or we sometimes immediately apologize, and we will be talking about apologizing a little bit later, how insincere it usually is. And I've done it many times, so it was such a shame-attacking exercise for me to realize that what motivated me very often when I was apologizing, and you'll learn too. So when someone is telling you something that you disagree, and particularly in an accusatory tone, then that is very easy to jump into conclusions and be really upset about it and counterattack, or try to diffuse the situation in different ways, but usually it leads to more conflict than less. And last week we asked you to practice this disarming technique that starts with really putting a real effort into seeing the situation through other person's eyes. Because you see, we always think we are right. So whatever we do, we always think that at that moment we are right. We might have promised ourselves not to do it again, or we may regret it right away. But in that moment that we do something, our brain is directing us to do because we think, oh, maybe this time it's going to be okay, right? So if someone says something to us, except when they're lying or joking, usually they think they are right. And we, using that you're right is, so now, usually we disagree with them because we think we are right. But the exercise is trying to see the situations through this person's eyes. So we asked you to, whenever you are attacked, if you remember, because usually we don't remember, you respond by saying, yes, you are right. And then put your all effort into genuinely, and that is key, genuinely find the truth in other person's words. So, and that is not easy, but really, and if you stutter or if you are genuine, that is going to be okay. You don't have to be eloquent. We usually try to be very eloquent in counterattacking the person, of dispelling their arguments, coming up with new arguments. No, if you want genuine communication, showing your vulnerability and showing that you are genuinely trying is going to be really very important. So,
Mariusz, if I might jump in and add a little bit
yes,
to
please do so. That is, I want you to do that, Akja.
Well, thank you. So usually when someone is communicating to us, they have a point that they want to make. They believe they are right and they're trying to communicate. And when we get defensive, which we do 99% of the time if we don't agree with it, what that does is confirm for them what they were already thinking. See, I knew it. They don't listen to me. He's not paying attention to me. He doesn't care what I have to say. So you're confirming it. So the disarming technique teaches us to say right off the bat, you are right. You are correct in what you're saying. And what happens is something that's called the law of opposites, where they suddenly then will lose the belief or weaken the belief of everything they had thought before because you agreed with them. Suddenly like, oh, I guess he's not the guy who doesn't want to listen to me, doesn't care what I have to say. Geez, maybe I've been hard on him, so maybe I need to let go of that. So what you'll find as you practice this is that the more you agree with someone, the easier the situation becomes from you. And usually when we're in a conflict and getting defensive, the first thing we want to do is just get out of that. Okay, let's end this conversation. Let's get done. So the best way to do that is to agree with them.
So let's do the poll. Thank you very much, Michael. I want you to jump in and clarify. So last week, did you apply the disarming technique? So we'll ask you to answer yes or no. Then we asked everyone to answer, not just those who are on the panel.
Most of people already answered. We're just going to wait a couple more seconds. And I think we're done.
It's a yes or a no. You either did it or you didn't.
So can you see the results? We have almost 50 people.
Results. Okay, so let's do it because it is very important that we really have practice, and we will be practicing it today. And so let's do the same sentence that we did yesterday, and we will. So what we will do now, we are going to divide you into pairs, and we will ask you to. It is going to be random, so we don't know who are going to be assigned. And in these pairs, we will ask the other person So you will in that pair you will have 5 minutes for this exercise, and we will ask you in these pairs to accuse the other person. And please take a piece of paper and write it down what you are going to be accusing. You'll be accusing the other person. You never listen. You only care about yourself. And you always ignore what I have to say. All right? So, AJ, thank you very much. So first one person is going to be the accuser, and the other person is going to be disarmer. And the other person's job will be to first say, yes, you're right, even when you don't feel like saying that. And we will explain with Michael why we may not feel like saying that. So please, so you will say, you are going to say you're right, and then genuinely try to find truth. Because all of us at times didn't listen to someone. All of us at times thought only about my own agenda. I know for me, for example, when I'm really short of time and a colleague of mine approaches me in the hospital, and I know that I am in a hurry to get to my office because my patients are scheduled, and he wants to discuss a patient. I know that it is important, but right now it is all about me being late. And that is unfortunately happens. That I'm often too optimistic. Anybody who interferes me going to my office so I'm not listening, right? I'm really thinking about how much time it's going to take, and that is not, particularly if he disagrees with my recommendations for that particular patient. No, that is not, doesn't go over well. So
Mario, would you like us to model one before we break people up into groups, and then they can...
Very good, very good.
By the way, guys, I think that the Zoom is not doing whatever we wanted to do. So I have the
last time I was able to do it. Maybe I can do it as a co-host because I've done it before.
Yeah, I've done it before too. I can. So I think we can improvise, and people can, like, people who are on panel, we can just choose pairs or diets from the people we have on panel and do it this way.
Okay.
I was turning on the feature, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah. So, thank you, and you're right, AJ.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't work. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So we will then. So the first, let me lay out the process. So one person is going to be. So we will not do this in pairs, but if you can practice at home in the future, do it this way. You accuse the other person. You never listen. It's always about you, and you don't care what I have to say. And the other person is disarming and say, yes, you're right, and then putting all the effort in finding truth in what the other person said. And at the end, the person who was disarming, right, the one who was admitting you're right, says how it felt for them, what grade they would give themselves, like in grading school, from A to an F or from F to an A, right? And if you are not getting, and then you are going to ask the other person how they would grade you from F to an A. And if you are not getting an A, you will ask, what would I need to do in order to get an A? And I actually ask that very often when I have a difficult conversation. I ask actually to be rated that way, or even with my patients sometimes. When I know that it didn't go too well, I mean, I'm asking how they would grade me. And then if I'm not getting an A, I'm asking, what do I need to do to get an A? All right?
So Manish, since we can't break up into pairs, why don't we, if everyone has a piece of paper and a pencil, how about I present a scenario and everybody just write down a disarming technique based on what I've
Perfect. Perfect. That is actually what we will be asking you to do in the future with your relationship journal. But perfect.
And
Thank you very much, Michael.
maybe we can ask some panelists just to unmute themselves and present their
So
response.
we will go through the panel afterwards, after they write it down. All right. So you do the accusation, Michael.
Okay, so everybody ready? So
Get ready for
okay, look. Are we ready? Okay. So look, it's 11:30. I told you I needed to use that room so I could do the webinar. And instead you're sitting in there doing your work. This is how it's been this whole quarantine. I don't have any space. I can't do what I need to do. You really don't care because all you care about is watching your stupid YouTube videos in the den. That's a fictional portrayal, by the way. So write down now, how would you respond to that using a disarming technique? So we'll just give it about another minute, finish up your thoughts, and then we will ask panelists to share.
And so let me model it for my response. Okay.
Please.
So so my response to you is, so to tell me this once again.
Mariusz, I told you I needed to use the den at 11:30 so that I could do this webinar. And instead you're in there watching videos. It's how it's been for this entire quarantine. I don't have any space. I can't do what I need to get done. And all you care about is watching those stupid YouTube videos.
That you're right. I'm sorry. I'm getting out of your way. You always get pissy with me, but I see your point.
So you want me to give you a grade on that, Mariusz?
So no, I will grade myself, right? I think it was a C.
Minus.
C minus. So you will give me a D. So you could see that, Michael. What you would give me?
I would give you a
I
C.
actually did it worse than I expected, but
That's why I said a C minus. It was worse than average. Yes, you said the right words, but it didn't seem sincere. You had a lot of anger and you threw something back at me to escalate the situation. So that's not being authentic and really trying to understand where the other person's coming from. It's rather you being more defensive and as I said, going through the motions of saying the right words. And that becomes very apparent in conflict like this. If you are simply saying the words, if you read a book that told you how to talk about things and you're simply going in there saying it, it comes off as really inauthentic. That's why it's important we practice these skills so that they become authentic and how we're utilizing them.
Yeah, so let me accuse you now, and you will go, and you will try to disarm me. So, Michael, you know that every Sunday morning I do those webinars. It's pretty important. It's not, it is not enough for me that you leave at 11, but I need to get ready, talk to other panelists to make sure that we are doing it right. But you're watching your stupid videos here, and you always disrespect me. You never listen, and you really don't care. You only want what is easy for you.
Wow. Well, you're right, Mariusz. We've had this conversation before, and I just wasn't being sensitive to the time or your needs. And So I can go watch these videos outside. That's fine.
Thank you. So how would you rate yourself?
Yeah, I give it about a B. I was still pissed at you and wasn't able to hide it well enough.
I mean, I think A- would be okay. So where would be a space for improvement?
Maybe an apology added into it to show that I really am sincerely sad about it. And a better validation of what other feelings you might be having.
Mm-hmm. And that is what we will be doing when we will bring in the remaining 4 of the 5 secrets of effective communication. Because as you may remember, and we'll go to that in a moment. So I see that a lot of nice people get. So I think that you did quite well, and that exactly that definitely I was trying to model things that were not effective. So let's go to Elsa and can you tell us how you would disarm a person?
Well, first of all, I said, you are most definitely right. I know better, and I'll move. Give me a couple of moments, and I'm truly sorry. That's all I said.
What would you give Elsa? I would give her an A. Yeah.
Oh,
Very good.
thank you.
So and we will ask everyone on the chat how you would rate Elsa, the next panelist when we go, right? So Diana, can we ask you how you would respond?
Sure.
Can you unmute Diana? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me unmute you. I mean, I cannot unmute you. Oh.
Diana.
AJ, can you make me a co-host
Can you hear me
I
now?
will be able to? Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My response was very similar to Michael's. I had put, okay, you're right. This environment is tough on all of us. I said, I apologize for not being sensitive to your needs, but I ask that you be sensitive to mine. I do have this time commitment. I know you have other time commitments or things that you want to watch or whatever. But if we could both just have some respect for each other and give us the time that we need, I think that things would work out a little bit better.
So Michael, how did it work for you? Thank you, Diana. How would you grade yourself first, Diana?
I would say a B.
Mm-hmm. So what would you think you could do in order to get an A?
Well, if it was, good question. Maybe elaborate a little bit more on whoever I'm having this discussion with on their needs to make them feel that more well heard on my part, perhaps.
Thank you very much. Janie. I'm sorry, I'm going to the panel as I see it. And you all see each other. Thank you, Diana, very much. Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Janie Becker, the encourager from Long Beach. And
Wonderful.
I said, you're right. I got distracted from timing. I'm sorry. I'll move right away. Thanks for your patience and understanding.
How would you rate your answer?
Probably a B. One of the things that I'm learning is it's better if I pause and breathe and think about what I thought I was going to say and drop half of it.
That is a very good point. That is a good point. Yeah, I'm so happy that I'm recording it because you guys are sharing so much wisdom, and that is what we want to do. So, Janie, and I actually think that you could give yourself an A, because you approached it with full admission and genuine vulnerability. Yeah, I mean, yes, we all get lost in time. So it is very relatable, even though it was as if example, but your response was very relatable. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. It was nice, and as you said at the beginning of the exercise, Mariusz, succinct. If you just go on and on and on, then people start to lose that initial connection they had with you. And so just kind of taking responsibility, acknowledging that they were correct, and somebody in the chat asked about having a plan, and you kind of had a little plan. I'll get out of here right away, and apologize for the inconvenience. I think that's an A answer to me.
Thank you very much. So, yes, Michelle.
So I kind of have a question related to this. I wonder, you know, part of when Michael was starting it out, he talked about you always do this. And so I guess, and I'm sorry, I didn't necessarily was able to stay the last time to hear the whole process, but you know, if somebody is saying to you, you always do this, it's always great if they can come to you the first time it happens. And maybe in Michael's scenario, maybe he has come to you multiple times and you may have appeased those comments, which led to the frustration. But how often do we actually let things go and don't say anything till we really get ticked off, and then it becomes a much bigger deal than it has to be? You know, that's why some of the answers are really, it's really good practice. I just wonder, you know, about the other side of when you go to be the complainer, if you will, you know, and how those can escalate within relationships. And I think the second part is, I have this.
Can I stop you? I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I'm at the age that I can process only one question or one comment at a time. So yes, and that is very, very good point. And we try to address that if you have a grievance, so because on one hand, disarming technique is that someone has a grievance against you, right? But how to do it when we have a grievance, right? So then we said that timing is very important. We ask the person to, hey, when we can talk, and we give ourselves at least 24 hours, right? So, and in these 24 hours, we are focusing how we are going to express first caring. And it is, and we know that the most difficult relationships are with people that we love the most, they are closest to us. So we are focusing on expressing that love first, rather than the grievance first. And then we use the specific phrase taken from Marshall Rosenberg, you know, that when you do or say this, blah, 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 I feel, and here we generally respond to how I feel, and we put I feel. And then we say, therefore, I ask you, and here we generally, oh, I'm sorry, I went too far. So scroll back, rewind. So when we have a grievance against someone, we ask about timing. We ask 24 hours later, we practice to express love. We focus on that. We start with I love you, and there is something that I would like to tell you. But whatever you think, I always love you, you know, even when I sometimes have some comments about your behavior with that. So when you say or do this and this, I feel this and this because this and this. And so you are explaining your point of view, and then you formulate the request. Therefore, I ask you, blah, blah, blah. So this is a format that was taken from so-called nonviolent communication. So how you can be assertive about what you need, and at the same time you are not really aggressive about it. Right? So and as you can see, it can take very little time. So
let me respond to another part of Michelle's question there. So she was very astute, and she picked up the use of the words like always. You're always in the room when I need to get in there. We've had this talk 100 times. Okay, so always is an example of an unhealthy semantic. And we're going to do a workshop, I think maybe next week, on unhealthy semantics.
Yes, exactly.
It's using language that does not accurately reflect reality and often leads to additional conflict. So in the scenario you gave there, while you reflected back to me, Michelle, yeah, if I were to say something, you are always, look, I need the room, you're always in there when I need it, the odds are that's going to increase the chance of conflict. The cognitive behavior therapist in me, if I hear someone say that, I'm going to stop them right away. Always, wait, can you give me one example of a time I wasn't in there? But I know in real relationships, not in therapy, that doesn't go over very well. Talk to my kids who've had that answer for their entire life. So the reaction to want to respond and say, no, it's not always. It just happened this one time. That's not the time to do it. If you're actually trying to do a disarming technique, you don't argue back. You don't respond to those potential sticky points there and simply saying, you're right, I'm sorry. Even if it's not accurate, even if it's not factually true that you are always in there, that is not the moment to do it. That's for another conversation. As Mario said, let's schedule a conversation to do agreements with me.
So Michelle had this question.
I'm old, so I can't remember what it was. It'll come back to me.
So I apologize. So the good thing is that I always have the notes next to me. And so please, if you have any questions, please write them down and we want to answer them on a regular basis. So who next would like to show their disarming to what Michael said, to Michael's accusation? Please raise your hand. Yes, Regina. Can you unmute Regina? Andrew, can you make me?
Yes, I did. So for
There we
everyone,
go.
there is a
There we
microphone icon, and if you want to speak, you just press this microphone icon, and then it's stopped.
Okay.
And this way you can speak whenever you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think I would be very direct to the point, and how I would respond to this is, you're absolutely correct. I apologize, and I will be more considerate in the future. Do you think it might be helpful if we could make up a daily time schedule, so therefore we can both share the office and come to terms with this?
Thank you very much. And what grade would you give yourself?
B plus.
Okay. So what would you need to do to get to NA?
Maybe I could add a little bit to it. I think the important factor when you're dealing with confrontation, I always believe the eye contact and the way it's said and delivered means a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to add that. In other words, you're looking at somebody in the eye, not somebody that's walking away saying, oh, I'm sorry, well, blah, blah, blah. I think the eye contact and the sincerity means a great deal.
Oh, that is very important thing, that you are genuine, your body language is corresponding to being genuine, and your tone of voice. See, the thing is that in relationships it's very hard to really make an accusation of someone else's tone of voice or explain how you feel, but you definitely know how that person feels towards you by their tone of voice and body language, or even how they walk in the moment. You make, when you live with someone for a long time, you are very sensitive. When someone enters home, you can hear it, how they unlock the door. You already know what's coming next. So some of you. So, anybody else would like to share their? Abigail, you wanted to say something. You had a question. You didn't catch what?
I didn't catch your question exactly. I was wondering, I missed some of your words.
My words?
I'm sorry. What we're talking about right now, you had a question that we were going to respond to, but I missed some of those words.
Oh, I don't know.
What you had before, Mariusz, please?
Okay, so what I said that it is so important to be genuine, I was simply rephrasing what Regina told us.
Okay, thank you.
That we need to be really genuine. So,
Mariusz,
thank you very much.
One little thing to that. I noticed that increasingly, even among people like us, I suppose, texting is the main way of communicating. And texting, if you could text the same disarming response to someone, and it may come off as sarcastic or any number of other ways. So it's really important to have these conversations in person, making eye contact, showing your sincerity. I even notice, as I was playing out the scenario with Mariusz, I'm staring at his eyes, which are in the center of my computer screen, and the camera is up here. And so it feels very weird because I want to look him in the eye, but I recognize that may be coming across as me looking down or whatever. So I think the computer people are going to have to figure out how to put the camera right in the middle of the screen so that we can Zoom to communicate more effectively with our family and friends.
So there is actually no disarming emoji.
Disarming emoji. No, that would also come up as fake, really. Because you cannot say, "Oh, I'm disarming you." Oh, you can say it, but it's not going to have the same effect. All right, so let's move to the next. Yes, go ahead.
Mariusz, do you want to do the rest of the polls?
Yes, please do. Let's do that.
So we have the second poll asking for those, what was the response to the disarming technique when you used it?
Or even in this example that we did just now. Oh, guten Abend, Femke.
Okay. So in my majority of time, the situation got better, but we have someone that had the situation that got worse.
Mm-hmm. So disarming. Pardon?
I said, does that person who said it got worse want to talk about it, and we could see maybe what happened there?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm Joe.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty shortly after the webinar last week, and there was a little conflict going on. At this point, I can't really tell you what it actually was. But,
very good point.
but that's my problem with the Swiss cheese head. But it's just like you're right. Followed by "Don't try that shit on me." I was right there, and we're going to have an argument about this right now. and too much knowledge sometimes is can be not beneficial. I think these techniques are really good, but if it seems like it's coming off as a technique, it's not going to work.
So thank you very much. That is such a wonderful response. No, that is you're right. It is not easy, but at the same time, so we will use all other, all five secrets of effective communication today, and you will see that it is the whole package. And so in the situation like that, because for example, me and my wife, we both know those techniques, right? and so I genuinely believe that they work, and particularly, you know, for a long time, when people ask us, oh, how is it to be married to another expert in psychotherapy, another psychiatrist, an expert in human behavior, my wife would always respond, oh, it is great because we cannot bullshit each other because we can see through it. And so here, in particular, it's important that we stick to the genuineness of it, right? And we will do now the rest of the 5 secrets, and you will see how. So in this situation, you can say, "Oh, don't try this shit on me." I'm sorry, that was the quote.
No, that was
yeah. That is how I heard it. And we are using here. We are not using this as a profanity. We're just using it as quotes. And genuine quotes, right? We don't want to sugarcoat it. So here, oh, don't try that on me. The response would be, I see how you can feel that it is not genuine, but I'm trying my best right now. And that is what I learned. So again, going to your vulnerability, I don't know any better, right? That is what I learned and want to do. And actually, the goal of all those techniques is to deepen our relationship. So yes, I'm trying to deepen our relationship.
Also, Mari, the part that Joe said, well, you're right. That's a hard thing to get. It's something that I struggled with when I first learned these techniques. For those of you who heard last week, I gave the example of my daughter. You're the worst dad ever. And of course, that puts me on the defensive. And I know I'm not the worst dad ever. I've worked with plenty of worse dads than I am. So you know, my initial response is to want to argue with her. But it's important on the you're right is you're really trying to understand where they are coming from. Otherwise, it is artificial. It's not genuine. So, you know, and with practice over time, you can get through this process a little quicker. But what needs to be going on in my mind with my daughter saying you're the worst dad ever is, okay, this is her, this is a teenage girl expressing some dissatisfaction in the way that I've been supporting her lately. You know, kids talk in hyperbole. Maybe she feels like I'm the worst one ever, but it's just how she's expressing herself. So then for me to say, you're right, I haven't been responding to you as effectively as I needed to lately, but let's see how we can work this on. Then it shows her that I'm not just bullshitting her, because trust me, like I said, my kids, my wife, I've heard for years, don't pull that CBT bullshit with me. And so I get it. They get it. But showing that, you know what, I see where you're really coming from here. And I do agree. You're right in your perspective right now. Goes a long way.
Yeah, there was one other part of that scenario that was going on is the belief work. And I found pretty clearly that that should be pointed inward to look at my own beliefs rather than say, is that a healthy belief, honey? You know, that doesn't work well either.
That relates to what Michael said before, that if someone says you always, you know that always, not always. No, it is not the time to do the camera check of perceptions of the other person. No, this is not your role. Remember, in a relationship, you can only influence your part. You cannot influence the other part. That is the paradox that Albert Ellis, the father of all cognitive behavior therapy, said, that people claim that they cannot change themselves, but keep on insisting on changing others. No. And blame, you know, oh, you did this, you know, you need to change that, is the greatest obstacle to improving relationships. And actually people want to stay in that blame. Okay, yes.
I think it's a good segue to the third poll, asking how the people feel.
Please.
Let's do it.
All right. Very good.
All right. Okay. We're going to give it a few more seconds. So here are the results.
Yeah. That is it. Can you keep them on for a few moments?
Sure.
So Michael and I are going to
What would I say? Of us, it looked like about 2/3 of that were either awkward or unnatural, which is another way to say wrong. It feels wrong when the first time we do that. And this goes back to what we've talked about in the previous webinars, cognitive emotive dissonance. When you're learning a new behavior, when you've got old habits and you're asked to change that, those old habits to something different, it is going to feel wrong at first. The example Mariusz has used a few times is the driving. You know, in the United States, we drive on the right side of the road, not the correct, but actually the right side of the road. In the UK, they drive on the left side of the road. So when you go, you know, when I fly to London and rent a car, it feels very wrong for those first few hours of driving on the wrong side of the road. But is it wrong? No, it's not wrong. I have to go through those wrong feelings if I want to successfully get to my hotel, or I'm going to end up in a ditch somewhere. So when we're learning a new behavior that's against our previous habits, it does feel wrong at first. So it does feel wrong when my daughter's yelling at me to say, "Oh, you're right, sweetheart. You're the sweetest little angel that ever lived." That doesn't feel right. But I recognize that if my goal is to have a more successful, empathic relationship with my daughter, I need to disarm her a little bit. Don't tell her my secret, but that's what we need to do. So it is part of the normal process of emotional learning to have a phase where it feels wrong. Doesn't mean it's time to stop. It means it's time to keep fighting through it until it does start to feel right.
Thank you very much. That is exactly it. Whenever we engage in the behavior that is in opposite to our habits, it feels wrong, awkward, unnatural, weird, while it may be the right thing to do. And actually, it is natural. You know, it's not like the British have different brains to drive on the left-hand side of the road. So yes. So when we engage in these exercises that we are going to present to you now, then we will experience this feeling wrong. And that the problem is when things feel wrong, we give up. We stop doing it because of what? It feels wrong. And it is so much easier to stay in our habits. So yeah, and here, so please, again, ignore this wrong feeling and keep practicing. Because if you go to England and you stay there long enough, eventually driving on the left-hand side of the road is going to feel as comfortable as driving here in the States. So yeah. Okay, so let's move into the expression of all called 5 secrets. Let's go over them quickly, and then we'll be engaging in another practice of them through the process. So the first technique. These are all five. So the first three are disarming technique, which is we just practice. Empathy. It is, and here you have two aspects of empathy. It is thought empathy, so really rephrasing what the person said in their own words, because that shows that we genuinely listen. So for empathy, is the first skill actually to add to this. Maybe I need to let Dr. Burns take it, because then these things are collected from Dr. Burns's book, Feeling Good Together. And in order to be really empathetic and do the disarming technique properly, we first have to listen. So yes, so instead of listening to our own thinking, how I'm going to respond to it, for listening, really paying attention, being really attentive to the other person, and then rephrasing what they said, it is thought empathy, and then also rephrasing how they possibly could have felt. And then the third part is inquiry. Ask them gently into what they just said, and then there are I feel statement, then my response, for example, and that is again needs to be genuine. I feel a little bit perplexed, like in the example that Joe gave us, that don't use this stuff on me. Then you say, I know that it is a new technique and I may not be really good at it, but that is the only thing that I learned and it is promising. So I want to connect with you, and now I'm a little bit, I'm helpless in this moment because I don't know how to connect with you on a more intimate level. Right? So that would be I feel statement. And then stroking, if the conversation goes well, then you stroke the person, but not in some a way. Oh, I hear you. Oh, you must. Oh, it is very courageous of you to come and talk to me like that, particularly to our kids or patients or customers. No, that is paternalistic. So really trying to, and we will be getting into that into a few moments. So can you show the panel again? Because I want to see people's, then we will get to each of them again, but
So, there is a small feature that allows to see both slides and the panelists.
Yeah, I know, but I like seeing panelists, like looking at the slide is for me as much because I know what is on the slide. So let me go over the typical errors in disarming. So I already patronizing, right? So it is again dismissive way of saying, oh, I can see how you might feel. You see, oh, I see. So it is really not genuine. Can you see it? The second very common error is trying to explain yourself. And so for example, can you see that I'm just lost my track of time, it is, so trying to explain yourself doesn't work. But Janie did a really great job at explaining her perplexion, not noticing how time flies. So Janie did it in a very genuine way. But most often when we do it trying to explain, we really trying to explain things away rather than engage in a connection with the other person. Remember that the goal of those techniques is to improve and bring more intimacy to our connection with the other person, right? And then not being able to notice the truth in what the other person says. So you know, so when we will be doing inquiry, we'll be asking, hey, do I understand you right? You know, so when we do empathy, we try to rephrase what they were saying and how they might be feeling, and using as much of their words as possible. But then we'll be, do I get you right? And then they may be explaining it to us. So that is when we jump into conclusion that we already think that we know what they want to say. And then there is the very tricky one, and I left this for dessert because it is my favorite one. It is apologizing, and I've been guilty of apologizing to make things go away. That was the error that I committed so many times. When I'm accused, I'm okay with oh yeah, I'm right, yes, you're right, and then jumping into apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, I will never do this again. And and am I connecting with the other person in an intimate way? No, I want things to go away. I'm apologizing to stop the other person from being angry at me. What else do you want from me? I apologize. I'm genuinely sorry for what I did, right? Particularly that we know that we did something wrong, right? So this apologizing is, so I'm not saying not to apologize, but timing is important. First, connect, do empathy, do inquiry, do go through all the steps. You say I feel statements. That may be time for you to apologize, but don't focus on your apology too much, because you want to go to stroking, and at the end you may apologize when you go through everything. Okay. So yes. So that is very important, that we first acknowledge how the other person feels before we start apologizing. Right? Do you get it? So that may be very surprising to a lot of people, but apology may be a barrier for good, effective communication. So don't use it too early, right? Because it's dismissive. I see that it strokes some truth in some people's faces. So I'm glad. So let's go through each of the thing, and I'm going to ask Michael, because I've been doing a lot of talking. I will ask Michael to expand on each of the. We don't spend enough time on disarming, but we will go to the next one. Other feeling empathy, Michael.
Okay, so the second communication technique is empathy. And as Mario said, it's dividing it up into feeling empathy and thought empathy. So empathy overall is trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, trying to see the world through their eyes. So that can be really hard to do when we're in conflict and we're very much in our heads. And as we've said over and over, you're convinced that you're right. But empathy is about saying, okay, let me look at it from their perspective. How might they be observing it? And so we talk about the two different kinds of empathy. There's feeling empathy. And so acknowledging how a person is feeling. So in the example I gave earlier, hey, get out of the den, I need to get on this webinar. A statement like, oh, I can see it must be frustrating. I meant to be out of here 10 minutes ago. I'm so sorry. It must be frustrating. Oh, I get why you're angry. Oh, I know you're disappointed because you wanted to get in here early. Stating their emotional experience is a very strong way to help someone feel like you're connecting and do see things from their perspective, even if you've made a mistake in their eyes. So that's conveying the feeling part. So then we also want to convey thought empathy, which is paraphrasing another person's word. And this takes a lot of practice. You don't want it to be like, you don't want to sound like a therapist when you're in a relationship communicating. I'm very angry at you. Oh, so you're angry at me. You never listen to me. I don't listen to you very often. Those are not good examples. Okay, I'm giving you those as not good examples. So, but finding ways to convey that you get where they're coming from. Oh, I know these webinars are a big deal to you, and you have a lot of preparation to do. Let me move into the other room for you. So it's conveying, you know, what they said. Hey, I need you to get out of here. We talked about this 100 times. I need to be in here at this time. You are paraphrasing what they've said to show that you really got the message. So you want them, through the empathy piece of this, to know that you got the message literally of what they're trying to communicate to you, and the emotional message. And then they can feel like they've actually been heard, and hopefully de-escalate the conflict a little bit.
Thank you. Any questions to this part? Because that is very critical. After disarming, we go to empathy. Yes, Michelle?
So I appreciate so the comments, you know, earlier about, you know, you're working on yourself and you're practicing these techniques. And if you're not in a shared environment of somebody else practicing the techniques, right, it's really one-sided. So and maybe you're going to get to this later, but as you practice these techniques and you're maybe not getting and it takes practice, getting the response you would hope to get, right? Because your partner may not be practicing these techniques, or whoever you're working with. You know, how do you detach from the outcome of those responses that are given back to you as you're practicing? Because I know detaching from the outcome of situations and ideas and concepts is also really important in our overall work.
Yes, you're right. And so that is a concern, because what we will do at the end today is going to do a certain form of practice, because life gives us opportunity to practice when we are not prepared. And that is when we are going to react in habitual way rather than a new way. So let me anticipate that already. And so the practice that we are going to do was developed by Dr. Maxim Malsby, who 2 days ago would have had 80 years. And so his 88th birthday he celebrated 2 days ago. And so the 5 rules for healthy thinking and ABCDs, these are taken from his work. And on our website, we have it, and we are going to give you this website at the end so that you can always go back to that website. Let me send to everybody right away since I'm thinking about it. So, one thing that I make such a long introduction that I lost what I was supposed to say.
The question was about attachment to the
attachment to the outcome. And so how to detach yourself, you ask. The thing is that we are not detaching ourselves. We are teaching, Michelle. So when we got attached many times and failed, then our natural tendency is to detach ourselves, right? And that is part of burnout. So, and I work with a lot, because I work primarily with metastatic cancer patients. So they went through a lot of treatments, and with new treatments, there was new hope and new rallying around it and new effort. And then the illness progressed, and then going to the next line of treatment. So they very often become detached, and they say, you know, I really don't care. So they are just moving through the motions, but without any enthusiasm, because it hurt them so much to get enthusiastic every time. Because of what? Every time they were attached. And that is part of being demoralized, is that, okay, I put so much effort into all this and I never succeeded. So they flip into detachment, which may come across as not caring. And particularly if people who professionally do care have this detachment, you feel it, because it is like connecting through a glass pane rather than genuine connection with another person. So I think that detachment is another obstacle to good communication. So detachment is I don't care. And in extremes, I need to take a note of that. AJ, if you could make sure that we are going to address that in the next workshop tomorrow. And the detachment is also this obstacle, because we come across as not caring, detached actually, right? And in extreme cases, cynical, sarcastic, and nihilistic, right? And you've seen those people, particularly in caring professions, because like Michael and I and AJ, we very often put a lot of effort in helping someone, and this person doesn't do their part, you know, and it is very, very easy to become detached, right? And so what we do is we teach people non-attachment, which is a middle way. So I still care, I'm still engaged, and I'm still committed to get the best outcome, but I am not attached. So I'm only focusing on what I can do now and do it best, at the same time knowing that I don't control the outcome. That even if I put my best effort, I may not get what I want.
Yes, and I also, that's awesome, Mariusz. And I also think that we have to recognize that what are we attaching ourselves to in that moment? If you believe that the first time you start practicing these techniques, suddenly your partner is going to, oh, thank you, the conflict is over, it's all good. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. This is for the long haul. This is practice, and it requires practice. And the goal isn't to immediately fix the next conflict. The goal may be to improve communication with your partner overall. So you have to recognize that it's a process, and it's not going to get there right away. You need to be investing in it over time to recognize that that's where you want to get to. But don't even be attached to that. It is the middle way. You're setting your boat on a course in a certain direction, but be open to the fact that the waves may take it any number of different places.
So yeah, and that is the reason that the second part of your question was how to do it to be prepared. And we will be practicing in our imagination, which is called rational emotive imagery. And so happens that Dr. Mosby and Dr. Simonton, at the same time, independently, in 1970, 1971, they developed the use of imagination to shift our beliefs. And you see, and Dr. Mosby was one of the first ones in 1969 to use imagery with basketball players to improve their game. So we were using this example of driving in England on the left-hand side of the road. It turns out that if you spend several times a day, at least 3 times a day, practicing, imagining driving in England on the left-hand side of the road, with really very precise how you are going to shift gears, how you are going to enter traffic, how you enter traffic by looking the right mirror, that your steering wheel is on the right side of the car, the easy turn is left turn, but be careful not to end up on the far lane. When you turn right, you need to let cars from the opposite direction pass and go to the far lane, because otherwise you are going to be going against traffic. When you come to a traffic circle, or they like roundabouts, plenty of them, so that you will not go this way like you do in America, you will go this way. So reading signs is from from this way. So that is so if you practice that, but most likely then you just, how do you guys feel when I'm describing that? It feels weird, awkward, unnatural. So just thinking about it feels weird, right? For those who never drove over there. So yes, ignoring that feeling wrong and practicing what you want. And you will notice that you will acquire those new habits much faster. So it is, and you will be much more prepared if those things do happen in real life. And you will be much more likely to engage in this. So we will do this exercise at the end of the program. So we need to vote with the program, right? So Michael, Please go to the third aspect of.
Okay, so the third aspect in the 5 secrets of effective communication, as Mariusz kind of mentioned, we separate the secrets into 2 different categories: listening skills and then self-expression skills. So we're still on listening skills. Disarming, empathy, both feeling empathy and thought empathy are listening skills. The third one is inquiry, asking for clarification, using gentle, probing questions to learn more about, what's going on with them. So, not confronting, not arguing in a way that makes it sound like, you're wrong, you need to prove yourself. What did you mean by that? Or what are you trying to say there? But simple, questions about what made them feel that way. Well, they made themselves feel that way. What made them think that way? Why did they think that way? Why did they assume that? What more could I be doing to support you? Those kinds of questions, again, in a non-confrontational way, that show that you really are interested in what they have to say. I know David Burns talks about this being one of the key. Inquiry is one of the smallest little secrets to get the most out of life. And I've heard him talk about him getting into medical school. He went into a medical school interview and started asking questions of the interviewer, who was a professor at the school, and got him talking about all of his research and all the different things he's done. And at the end of 2 hours, the professor, "Oh my God, what time is it? We were supposed to have a 15-minute interview." But he spent 2 hours talking about himself, and then ended up, according to David Burns, saying, "You are the exact kind of student we need at this school. I'd like to welcome you in, full scholarship, blah, 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 blah." And, and Burns saying he shared that secret with his children, and they've all come back saying, "I've got job after job after job simply by asking questions of the person who's talking to me to get to understand them." So between the disarming, using empathy, showing that you feel and understand what they're saying, and showing you have a real interest, it really progresses your capacity to communicate effectively with that person.
Thank you very much. This is a great thing. And yes, inquiry is a particular skill, because even how we ask questions, so it cannot be an interrogation, right? Because, so we want, so if we know, I mean, I had questions before about how people, how to connect with narcissists and so on. That is difficult. So that is really important for me to recognize what is the goal. We are now talking about these closest people that we really love. So that we want to connect with them in a genuine way. So that is our goal. So we want more intimacy in this, right? So it is not interrogation. And also because asking questions may be also very judgmental, right? So I would recommend, like Marshall Linehan taught us, that we both worked with Marshall Linehan for a period of time. She taught us not to use the question why, because why? That is already judgment is coming through to it. So she encouraged, even though it may be not perfect English grammar, how is it that how is it that you feel this way? How is it that, how is it? And then at the end, how is it for you right now? I mean, so, and also part of the inquiry may be, how am I getting you? Do you think that I now understand what you're going through right now? And again, you may actually ask them to grade you. This is the part that you can ask them to grade you from F to an A. For those who have not went through American schools, an A is the best grade in school, and F is a failing grade, the worst one. So that is very important, that you engage in this in very, very deep way, and then ask. Yes, and it may be hurtful that you are getting a C or a D or sometimes an F, and then asking them, hey. So that is what David Burns also calls a death of your ego. You are suspending your ego here, and you are, and that is, and he refers actually to other philosophical traditions that, and mystic traditions, that dissolving the ego was actually allowing for much deeper connection with other people in this our goal, but also with the divine or transcendental. But that only can happen when we forget, and that is, or that we actually represent it is not about me, it's about us. That makes sense? So, oh, by the way, if there are any questions, please put them in Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens or under those 3 dots that you have, because we want to answer them too. And actually, I cannot really go through all the chat because I'm losing. And I see it sometimes get distracted because, oh, this is a great question, and then it is gone. So thank you very much. All right, Michael will ask me to go further.
Okay, so continuing with the 5 secrets. So we've covered the listening skills now: disarming, empathy, and inquiry. Now we move into the self-expression skills. And the first self-expression skill sounds like it's the easiest, but for most of us, it's absolutely the hardest thing to do. And it is simply making I feel statements. Communicating, so we've been listening to the other person, getting their perspective, and now it's about communicating our perspective. So saying things like, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel disappointed, rather than accusational kind of, you made me, you pissed me off there. You're not listening to me. You don't care about my feelings. Rather, I feel not heard. I feel misunderstood. Simple thing. But for most people, it's a very big challenge. And I'll say, I think often it's harder for men. I think that women are often raised with the language to talk about their feelings, but men aren't. So men usually have 2 feelings: angry and pissed off. That's about it. And so learning an emotional vocabulary is often a step that takes some time in doing therapy with someone, for sure. Teaching them the language around that. But even in relationships and partners, creating room and allowing for expression of simple emotions versus perspective on what other people are doing to you, rather owning it and taking responsibility.
So that is it's I feel statement, and it's very easy that we can sometimes flip to I feel that, right? Which is not an expression of feeling, but an expression of my belief. So I feel that you really don't understand what I'm saying. That is not a feeling, it is my belief. And again, it comes across as like accusatory. So these are,
that one's really important too, because often in our culture, and I say our culture, but I know we have people from a lot of different cultures here, statements of feeling are unquestionable. So you can say something like, oh, I feel like you don't respect me. And then the person gets defensive. What do you mean I don't? No, you can't question it. It's my feeling. You can't question my feelings. No, that's a belief, and I'm going to question your beliefs. Feelings are emotion words. And so people, I don't think it's strategic most of the time, but people learn to frame beliefs or opinions through the lens of feelings, thinking that then it can't be questioned. But you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, so I feel like you are defensive. That is another part. Or I feel like you are not listening. That is not a feeling. It is my belief. And yes, so we like to phrase things this way because, yes, I mean, I'm not trying to be defensive. I'm trying to be understanding you. But I just feel like that. What are you going to do about that? Right? No, that is not a genuine I feel statement. Regina, please.
Yes, I have a question. How do you feel about someone saying to you, depending on the situation, the circumstances, an adult, not a child, about saying, let's agree, can we disagree? We can agree to disagree. However, let's work on a solution. I mean, how would that work in certain scenarios to you?
So from my perspective, it is very good when you have time-limited work-related issue that you just want to approach it. Okay, so yeah, the meeting is coming to the conclusion, and we cannot come to a consensus. And let me make a point, very important point. We don't want to come to a compromise. And it is not just language, but it is important that the truth is not in the middle. Yeah, let's find our middle ground. I got myself into a discussion about how to approach the pandemic right now in a healthy way, really based on medical knowledge. And sometimes someone threw at me total nonsense, and they say, you know what, that doesn't seem to be working. And now that, oh, cannot we find a middle ground here? And I say, you know what, it is like asking how to find a middle ground between, the fact that our planet is a globe and that flat earthers who believe that it's flat. What shape would be the middle ground for the planet, right? So certain things, because there's no way of finding compromise here, because there's a consensus that the planet is a globe, so a consensus is that we both agree that is something, right? So because in compromise, both sides lose. So if the goal is compromise, you want the other person to lose too, right? That is not a healthy approach. We want a consensus. And when we cannot get to a consensus, what Regina said, primarily in the working environment, or when there is a time limitation. So, okay, so we need to take an action right now. So we don't need to agree, but let's agree on what we are going to do about it, right? Finding the solution. But in the relationship, there is no, so in the relationship, the loving relationship in families, there's focusing on what is the end game. End game is that we want to have thriving relationship. And even if you memorize and practice those things, your relationship will always have difficulties. The suffering is inevitable. We are just giving you tools to engage with this suffering in a healthy way and resolve it really quickly. So it is not like, oh, we are going to get to this relationship with no conflicts. No, we will have conflicts. It is inevitable. But with these techniques, you will be able to get out of them. So thank you, Regina. So we are focusing on families, but what you are doing is even in the family when we are leaving for a vacation and okay, we are taking this or not, so that very simple solution we need to find. Thank you. All right, so if you could, Michael, go back to the secrets.
Okay, well, we'll do our final secret of effective communication. Again, a self-expression skill. And it's what David Burns initially called stroking. And I think over the years, he's tried to get away from that word a little bit, and he hasn't quite settled in on anything. Another word I've heard him use is respecting, affirmation. But the idea is that you're finding something genuinely positive to say about that other person, even in the heat of battle, even when you're angriest, even when you're not agreeing, find something positive to say. So again, the original term was stroking, and think about it as kind of making someone feel better about who they are and what they're doing. So in the example I used initially today about, hey, get out of the den, I need to do it, saying something like, oh, I know how important that it is for you to get on this webinar, and I think it's so great that you're out there trying to teach people around the world how to better handle things during this pandemic. Let me pick up my stuff and I'll get out of here as soon as I quickly can. So acknowledging, even like I said, even something really positive, a belief you have about them, helps disarm. That stroking is a disarming technique as well. It helps someone really feel like, okay, you get it. You get who they are and you appreciate who they are.
Thank you very much. So, and here it is the greatest error in stroking. I mean, I'm still used to using stroking. So habit. So the greatest error in stroking is not genuinely feeling something goodness in the other person. So really, so expressing warmth, expressing admiration and respect, even in this, and so we need to see another person as a human being, unconditionally accepting the other person in a profound way, and that is very difficult with people who may have very strong opinions that are very opposite to our values, that have many countries are very strongly divided along political lines or religious lines or some other ways that really we are investing our values in it, and that is what happens very often, is that the other people who don't share our values are painted in a non-human language, right? They may be painted as snowflakes or weirdos or whatever language you can have, extremists and so on. Sometimes their beliefs are extreme, right? But these are still human beings who are very invested in protecting their beliefs and their values, right? So seeing it from there, seeing something good and human in them, not forgetting that they are human, that is huge. So if we see the other person as totally bad, this element the stroking will not work. So we really need to exercise our emotional muscles here, right? So do we have any comments before we go on to the final phases of our, when we go to the homework and we go to the final phases of what we do?
So Kathleen had a question. Maybe I can unmute you, Kathleen, and you can ask your question from the chat. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So my question was, what if you're trying some of these techniques out and the other person doesn't want to hear it? They're so used to the old way, the rut that you've gotten into, that they don't even want to hear that you're in a different place now.
Thank you, Kathy. That is a good point. So first, you point to the very important issue that you didn't mention, but Joe alluded to it, that our conflicts follow similar ruts, similar scenarios, similar as like a screenplay, right? We go through those things. We may have forgotten what it was all about, but we know the rut, right? I was right, you were wrong. that is this match. So that was, so that would be, that is a great example. So first, yes, we happen to be in those ruts, and we cannot get the other person out of the rut, right? We can only get ourselves out of the rut. And so really this part of exercise is, all right, and really repeating it every time, they will notice the change. Of course, some relationships, even though they are in the family, they may be so distant from each other and cold, and they became the worst enemies in their lives. But I don't think it happened between you and Joe. So no, I'm very safe to say that these things will work in your family so eventually. So don't be attached to the outcome that, oh, it was going to work out the first time I tried. But keep on doing it. And that is what brings us to our next exercise, because this is going to really put everything together. All right? So if you could show us the first part of our relationship journal. And here I will ask you to really take the notes. The first question in your relationship journal. Can you show them? Because now when you will be applying those things, we'll ask you to really put those things in writing. Because, thank you. So that is where we really get to the nitty-gritty of it and really want to practice it in an effective way. So after the conflict, so after this whole thing played out for you with another person, you write down exactly what the other person said to you. Be brief, as Michael mentioned, that brevity is important, but also be very exact, precise. And don't say how you saw it. Oh, she chewed me out. No, that is not true that she chewed you out, unless she was a tiger. Or a cougar, but it won't happen to me in my age anymore. And so focusing on that first part. Michael, do you have anything to add to this part?
No. Are we having them do the exercise right now? So if you're doing the exercise...
No, we are not doing the exercise right now. That is the homework assignment.
Okay, I see. No, you covered it. But thinking back to when we talked a couple weeks ago about the camera test, you know, what would a camera capture? That's what Mario said. So we're trying to, what would a video camera capture? Exactly what happened and exactly what we said. It wouldn't capture someone chewing you out. It wouldn't capture she was a bitch. It wouldn't capture any of that. Just what was said and what was seen. So as you do this part, try to write it that way as clearly as you can.
Yeah, so and particularly leave out everything that video camera would not record because it's are your beliefs, your interpretations. So, and then the second step is write down exactly what you said, and again be brief, and again be very precise on what you said, because it is, and be honest with yourself. Don't show it to anyone except maybe your therapist who knows those techniques. All right, and then ask, and then look at this, whether it was an example of good communication or bad communication. And we already mentioned the errors that people often make. So look at that. What grade you would give yourself? All right. And what would you need? And then you go to the step 4. What were the consequences of your response in step 2? And that is exactly ties into our first, third poll. It was second poll maybe. And when we asked whether your response made the situation better or worse. So if the situation got worse, if the conflict got worse, here you look at it honestly. Why do you think it got worse? Why the issue was not resolved, right? And step 5 will be revise what you wrote down in step 2. So this is the relationship journal that Dr. David Burns developed, and that is the homework. That is a continuous homework for all relationships. If you notice that the conversation didn't go the way you wish to go, that is what happened. That is the part to do. So write down those questions. Yes, you can use these screenshots. Yeah, sure.
So let me add one thing here. Andrew, could you go back to step 2 for a moment, please? I'm sorry, step 3. So here's a pro tip. Here's an advanced tip for those of you who've been sitting in on these webinars. What I like to do here for step 3, because it's sometimes hard to figure out, was this a good communication, a bad communication? Well, we have a tool. We've provided you with a tool already to do this, and that's the 5 questions for healthy thinking. So in that regard, you can consider them the 5 questions for healthy communication. So if you're trying to figure out what you said, was it a good communication or bad communication? Well, ask yourself those questions. Was it based on obvious fact? Does it help me avoid conflict? Does it help me meeting my short and long-term goals? That is a way for you to figure out, if it's not clear to you in that initial moment, whether it was a healthy or an unhealthy communication. And then you can continue going with the rest of the steps.
That is a very good point. So let's stay on this. That is absolutely brilliant thing, and I felt communicate that. So yes, so here, whether in your response, was your response, whether it was based on facts, whether this response was protecting your life and health, whether this response was helping you to achieve your short and long-term goals for this relationship, whether this response was helping you to resolve or handle most unwanted conflicts. Avoiding conflict is not always the healthiest thing, but so handling conflict in a healthy way, in deepening the connection. And rule number 5, did it help you to ultimately feel the way you want to feel, right? Remember that sometimes we like to feel angry, so anger is only second to joy of all emotions that we like to maintain. But very frequently we regret that anger afterwards, and because we usually do or say things that we wouldn't otherwise mean to say. So thank you very much. So this is the Homburg assignment that we will ask you to do.
So yeah, so to elaborate, take a situation that happens to you this week, a communication that doesn't quite feel like it went as well as you wanted it to, and go through this exact process here. You don't have to use the 5 questions for healthy thinking, but it might help you to tease out some of the subtleties of what went wrong in the communication. Create something in this order, and we'll come back to it and talk about it next week.
And we will circulate with you the common communication errors in materials post this webinar that we are going to receive via email. So, but the easiest way is what Michael described, using 5 rules for healthy thinking and also healthy semantics to tease out the things that are unhealthy in that language. And we will have next week, we will cover healthy semantics, and possibly the following week, in 2 weeks from now, we will do the 3rd part to tie everything together. And again, accept the fact that you may not always remember it perfectly well. We say, write down exactly what the other person said. You know, you are a fallible human being. Your memory is never going to work perfectly well. So accept the fact that it's going to be the best approximation that you can do of what really happened, and the best approximation of your words, what was your response. But you will be surprised how good you are going to be at looking at those communications. Because usually we only know that we got into an argument, but we forgot how it started, what was it all about. We only know that we ended up in the same way that we ended up so many times before. We follow the same script.
Well, I might make another suggestion here, but only for those states in which it's legal. In New Mexico, you can record a conversation with only one party consent. So we all have these with us all the time. So if you want to have a communication and you want to make sure you accurately can describe what went on, there's little recording apps. You can just record the communication, have it in your pocket, and then you can go back through it later to see what was really said. I've seen people use that as weapons before in couples therapy, so you have to be careful with it. But it is, I wouldn't say in your biggest, most serious conversations. But if you want to practice a little bit, it's a good way to really keep track of what's going on in those situations.
Those of you in California, you need to have a consent of both parties. And what I usually do as the other person to record. So would like to talk to you, and there's something important, so and then 24 hours later, we are coming together, and that's, could you please record it, because I want this to improve my way of relating to you. And so please record it on your device. So it's going to be, you will do with it whatever you want. So that is how I approach it. So now we know that we had a lot of information. We did some exercise, but now we want to put it into some practice. And we know that life doesn't give us enough opportunities to practice when we are prepared. Life usually throws us the opportunities when we are not prepared, and we end up reacting in the old way. So I'll ask you to do with me right now this exercise of what we call rational emotive imagery, which is just sit comfortably without putting any significant pressure on yourself. You may lay down, whatever position you're in, but just make yourself comfortable. And just rest. You have no agenda and no ambition in this exercise. Just allowing things to flow. Drop into that space that is free of any judgment. Call it space of unconditioned awareness. Just being aware. Being aware of where you are. And being aware of that space in you. That when you let go of judgments, when you let go of all the shoulds and have-tos, when you let go even of the preferences, when you let go of I like it and I don't like it, you are dropping in that space that is common for all of us, the space of unconditioned awareness. Realizing that for this moment, there is nothing that you have to do. Just resting, just being. And realizing that, yes, I'm a human being, not a human being. As John Kabat-Zinn used to say. So just being is enough for me for this moment. There is nothing that I have to know more from this moment that I don't know. There is nothing that I need to understand, or that is nothing that I have to have for this moment. I have everything that I need for this moment. So, from this perspective, realizing that in this space, all the disturbing thoughts and difficult emotions dissolve themselves like snowflakes falling in the warm water. That I cannot add anything to this moment. I cannot take anything away. I can radically accept everything that is arising, radically and unconditioned, whether it is a sound, a sensation, other thing that's happening from outside or inside. I radically accept it. I radically accept myself in this moment. And this radical acceptance is the ultimate healing. So, now, just focus on your breath. Just notice, just becoming aware of your breath. Just thinking in when you breathe in and out when you breathe out. The beauty of your breath. And use your emotional GPS, the instinct that moves you towards what is nurturing and away from what is toxic. This basic is like a bottle light. Use that emotional GPS to navigate you through such a depth and the rhythm of your breath that feels the best right. You may notice that at the end of exhalation is this moment at the end of your exhale. And now think of a person or maybe an animal that you have this totally non-judgmental, unconditional love. And whenever you bring that animal or that person to your mind, you just feel the warmth and joy. Just bring that person to your conscious mind, to your awareness. Just experience this love and caring and kindness you have towards the creature. It almost feels like it's melting your heart. Yes, it's actually a lot of people feel this sensation in their chest of something melting, softening, or opening up. So keep your heart soft and open with this metaphor. Remember that sensation and keep that sensation. And look at this person or this animal, or maybe a plant, a living thing, and surround it with this loving light emanates from your chest. And what is the color of this light in your mind? Sometimes maybe look white, maybe orange or pink or blue or any other color. That is the color of love and compassion, caring and kindness that has meaning for you. And expand the circle of that light to include you. Start feeling the same feelings towards you. So put yourself in the middle of that circle of this love emanating, this caring, compassion, and kindness, with no judgment. Some of you may have had the sensation, oh, it doesn't feel right to put myself in the center. No, it is right. Like it is right, dry on the left side of the road. It may feel weird, but it is the right thing to do. Practice that. Seeing yourself surrounded by all that love. Expand that sense of love to your people that you are closest to. And see them in that love, in that circle, basking in that light. With no judgment, no preferences, no I like it, I don't. Just unconditionally accepting everybody. Now imagine yourself really wanting to practice your vacation skills. So see yourself really practicing the empathy, disarming, and yes, and realizing that we all are here for the same purpose. And we are all about love. But we are scared of intimacy. So, yes, courage is not to do what is easy and right, but it's doing what is right even if it feels scary. So see yourself engaging in genuine engagement. So now very gently and comfortably return to your usual state of awareness, usual state of consciousness, becoming more aware of the lights, the sounds, and the presence of other people. And as soon as you're ready, just go ahead. All right. I got the message that the volume was a little bit low for some people. I apologize for that. I got myself a new microphone. Okay, so thank you very much. Please do this exercise. I may ask AJ to cut this out and maybe send us a separate file for you to practice. And yes, the new skills we are going to deepen this exercise to more. So see yourself really applying all these skills in your head, on paper. And once you do the relationship journal, practice in your head how you want to do it the next time. The point number 5 in your relationship journal. All right, so if you have any questions, please put them in. Any comments,
I unmuted everyone here on the panel, so if you want to say something or ask a question, feel free. Laura.
Hi there. I put a question onto the chat, but yeah, didn't write it very well. I was just wondering. Oh, sorry, everyone's disappeared. Hi there. I was just I'm calling from the UK, by the way.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much. It was really it was a really great thing, and I'm really glad I tuned in because I've learned so much stuff. But one thing that I feel like I learned was that actually I've been using a lot of this myself. But I was in a relationship where I was with somebody who I was doing these kind of techniques with, and I was saying, I'm so sorry, I understand you, you know, I'm the one in the wrong. And that went on for years, and actually I was taking far too much responsibility because he would never do the same thing. So I'd be doing these kind of steps, and then he would be sort of, you know, in the end I was kind of appeasing him, and he was obviously, he was quite narcissistic, and I completely lost touch with what reality was, because I was saying, yeah, you're right, I had to, you know, and what we left Marty behind, we went into his, and he wasn't doing the same for me. So I was just wondering what you thought about if people come to you and they are regularly being aggressive, hurtful, and they're not doing this, they're not doing their side of this. How should you be saying, you're right, I'm sorry, you know, when there is that imbalance? Is that healthy for you? Is that healthy for them? You know, because sometimes I think the reason why narcissists develop is because people have appeased them, you know.
So thank you very much. So Laura, I will answer your question right now, but I wanted to say goodbye to everyone. Those who can stay, we will hang back for another 10-15 minutes. But for all of you, thank you for your participation. You are going to get notes for next class next week. And your comments when you send them, we really appreciate them, and we try to improve our delivery every time. We are not pros in this. We are pros in the techniques, but we're not pros in the technology around it. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day. And I will come to your question.
Okay, mine is almost over. Mine's over. Okay, mine is 2 seconds from being over.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'm coming to you, Laura. Thank you very much for joining us from the UK. And yes, and we want to establish our presence in the UK too. Yes, the problem with narcissists are unfortunately very difficult, particularly. I may say myself, I needed to humbly accept my own narcissism. So I'm speaking on both sides of hope on recovering narcissist, and also a person who dealt with many narcissists, right? You know, so the fact that some people stay in a relationship with the narcissist is one difficult issue. But another difficult issue is how you can deepen this part. So from what you heard today and what you told us, it sounds like the one part of the communication that you were doing was, yes, you were trying to understand, but you didn't go into I feel statements. You didn't go, it sounds to me that what you have learned in this class, what might help in the future such discussions. First, avoid narcissists, that is best. But if you
how do you know?
Yeah, how do you know? Yes, yeah, they can charm you. They have a lot
Is
of.
it you? Is it them? You know.
Yeah, exactly. So So that is a very difficult thing. That is, but also there's for them is difficult because they are living in very superficial relationships from their perspective too. They're afraid of intimacy. How I'm seeing it is by expressing our own feelings to the narcissist. First, we need to balance that. Narcissists that you have professional connections, that is a very different way of dealing with them than narcissists that you have in close relationships in your family. So with the narcissist that you deal with professionally or outside of your family, you are not interested in intimate connection, right? You want to disarm them. That is very good. And actually disarming a narcissist is quite easy. And I will not go into very details, but you will find them in the book, They're Feeling Good Together by David Burns here. I think it is page 158. I'm going to check. Because I'm giving it this, 154. I'm giving this assignment so often that I even know what page. Because that is a very common question. How do I deal with a narcissist? And one thing is stroking goes a long way with them because they are eating actually end up eating from your hand if you feed them that. But at home, you really want to work with a different way. You are actually wanting to connect with them. So I feel statements, how you perceive this conversation. So starting the conversation, bringing up that issue, like 24 hours later, like we frame that, using that phrase from Marshall Rosenberg, when I see you do this or say that, I feel this because, therefore I ask, so really, because it is a close relationship, you don't give up. You approach it with non-attachment to the outcome, very important, non-attachment. So knowing that you don't control it, you can only do your part here. And yes, it is very difficult. So I really appreciate all people who dealt with me over the years, and they're still stuck with me. So thank you.
So if I might jump in and add a little bit to that, thanks for the question, Laura. That's an important one. I've got pretty low tolerance for abuses. I've worked with lots of victims of trauma, survivors of human trafficking. I've seen patterns in abusers that, especially if they're narcissistic, they're not often that open to change. So communication is a very important aspect of to teach people who are being victimized. But really for me, it gets to the point of, as we've been saying over and over, we want everyone else to change, but don't recognize that we're the only ones that we can change ourselves. And I really want to emphasize that for someone. I'll do a lot of education about what I think is going on based on what they're telling me, and kind of lay it out at some point a little harshly of, you really have one of two choices here. You can either stay in this relationship and figure out how to live with that person, not expecting they're going to change, or you can leave that relationship. Those are your two options. And their decisions around that may be different from session to session, but based on where they are, I'm going to work with them all types of skills that are outside the scope of this webinar today to look at, what are the reinforcers you're getting from this person? Is there other places you can get that same reinforcement from someone else besides this person, or not from this person? As I said, it's a pretty complex treatment model to get there, but in the end, it's helping you become the best you that you can be and make a decision for yourself whether this is healthy and whether you want to continue with it or not. Communication is a key element, but as Mario said, being attached to an outcome that something you say or something you're going to do is going to make this person change, you're kind of setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment.
I didn't mention the issues of abuse. The issues of abuse, that is very clear that you need to seek safety first, and everything else is secondary. So if there's an unsafe environment, communication is to get help to get you out of there. So
But just to say, I'm not in it anymore, but I'm still wondering whether if someone's aggressive, you should be saying, you're right.
No, violence,
You know?
physical violence, definitely not. I mean, that is if you are in the challenging situation, if actually disarming technique you may avoid aggression. You can use disarming to really postpone, get out yourself out of the situation. So yeah, surprisingly, as you may use disarming to disarm a potentially violent situation. But if the situation is repetition of previous situations, no, there's zero tolerance for violence in the relationship.
Okay, it's interesting because I think that I sometimes feel like I didn't stand up for myself then, and now because I went to the appeasing, and now with people I do, but it's not, that's why I feel like it's like to say you're right to someone if you're right, I'm sorry if they come to me, not aggressively, but so it's just a fine line. I'm like wondering, but
Yes.
I'll keep thinking about it.
So
and keep trying it out and seeing what happens.
So using the other parts, so use the relationship journal because it will show you if you used all 5 secrets. And I feel statements are going to be so. Actually, that is what David Burns calls assertiveness part. So because he calls everything an acronym EAR, like an EAR. Empathy, which is disarming and empathy, and inquiry. This is empathy part. And then A is assertiveness, which is statement how I feel, and R is respect. So all five secrets may be also used in that acronym EAR.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So assertiveness is an important part of it. So you are not losing yourself for that relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Elsa, do you want to ask a question? Elsa? I hope everybody's safe.
Yeah.
You too.
I don't know how to get up.
Elsa.
Yes, Elsa, we can hear you.
He can hear you.
I just was trying to get out.
Okay.
Sorry. Anyways,
worries.
thanks. I'll
Thank
walk
you very
away.
much. Okay, you can walk away. Andrew can not kick you out.
All right, thank you.
He has the power. He has the only power to kick people out.
I'm here. I'm not here to kick people. Or maybe.
Any other questions, comments, ideas?
Maybe you can ask people. Maybe thank you for all who joined our Facebook group, and
Yeah,
great having you there. Wonderful place.
yeah. So our Facebook group is great, and so I'm going to send you the link, maybe to everyone. I said before the link to the page where all the webinars are saved, the recordings, all the webinars, you can find them. So this recording possibly Wednesday, Thursday will be available of this class, but you will find previous classes, also an announcement of the new workshops, new webinars. And the Facebook page, on that Facebook page, we have a lot of lively discussion in between webinars. the link goes to everyone, the group, so please join the group, and Dr. Yanchik will accept you. All right, so thank you very much. Our 15-minute past webinar chat is also over. We appreciate all your comments and your presence, and also the warmth of these webinars is also nurturing to us. I think I can speak also. Michael?
Absolutely, it's really makes my day to have you all join us and share with us and help us learn as well. Thank you all very much.
Big privilege, and thank you, Andrew and Prasanna, for making it possible. And you know, for Andrew, it is so hard that he needs to pay attention to all those details, technical details, and so we really appreciate that. So thank you very much. So
great being part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Be safe.
Thank you.